You know, if there's one thing the universe has taught us over the past few millennia, it's that predators always win. At least, that's what the Galactic Predator Council would have you believe. And honestly, up until recently, they had a pretty solid track record. Picture this, a massive space station shaped like a claw, because subtlety was apparently never their strong suit. Inside the Council's war room, surrounded by the skulls of 1,000 conquered species, sat Vexstar the Bone Crusher. Now, Vexstar looked exactly like what you'd expect from someone with that title. 8 feet tall, covered in scales that could deflect plasma fire, and teeth sharp enough to open cans. He was the kind of guy who probably practiced his intimidating laugh in the mirror every morning. Grimlock, Vexstar rumbled to his lieutenant, a creature that resembled what would happen if a velociraptor had a very unsuccessful date with a porcupine. Report on our latest acquisitions. Grimlock consulted his datapad with claws that could slice through titanium. Excellent news, Lord Crusher. The Floofian homeworld surrendered after we showed them a single hologram of our fleet. The tentacle people of Squishy Prime didn't even wait for our demands. They just started sending tribute the moment our scout ship entered their system. Vexstar's chest swelled with pride. This was how the galaxy was supposed to work. Predators at the top, prey species cowering below, and a nice, orderly food chain that hadn't been disrupted in over 3,000 years. It was simple, efficient, and most importantly, it kept him in power. Any new hunting preserves identified? Vexstar asked, because apparently calling them planets with sentient life was too boring. Actually, yes. Grimlock's eyes lit up with the enthusiasm of someone who'd found a particularly interesting stick. Our deep space scouts have located a system in what the locals call the Milky Way. Third planet from the star, mostly water, single moon. The inhabitants call it Earth. Earth, Vexstar repeated, rolling the word around like he was tasting a fine wine. How delightfully primitive. Population? Approximately 8 billion sentients, all of a single species. They call themselves humans. Vexstar nearly choked on his morning glass of fermented fear essence. 8 billion members of the same species living on one planet without eating each other? That was either the most impressive prey species he'd ever encountered, or the most disappointing predator species in galactic history. Have they achieved interstellar travel? Barely. They've managed to reach their moon and establish some orbital stations, but they're still using chemical propulsion. Absolutely adorable. This was perfect. A massive population of technologically inferior beings, all conveniently located on a single world. It was like the universe had gift-wrapped them a new hunting preserve, complete with a bow on top. Excellent, Vexstar purred, already imagining the tribute these humans would provide. Prepare the intimidation fleet. We'll give them the full treatment. Massive ships, ominous lighting, maybe some dramatic music. By the time we're done, they'll be begging to become our newest prey species. Because that's how it always went. The Predator Council shows up, demonstrates their overwhelming superiority, and within a few hours they have another species adding to their tribute collection. It was so routine they could probably do it in their sleep. What could possibly go wrong? 3 weeks later, the Predator intimidation fleet dropped out of hyperspace above Earth, with all the dramatic flair of a summer blockbuster. 50 massive warships arranged in a menacing formation, each one bristling with enough firepower to crack a moon. Their hulls were painted in intimidating blacks and reds, covered with spikes that served no practical purpose except to look scary. The lead ship even had glowing red eyes painted on the front, because apparently someone in the Predator Council had the aesthetic sense of an edgy teenager. Vexstar stood on his command bridge, wearing his finest ceremonial armor and practicing his most terrifying scowl. This was always his favorite part. The moment when a new species first laid eyes on the mighty Predator fleet and realized just how thoroughly outclassed they were. Let's open a communication channel to the planet's leadership, he commanded. Let's see how quickly they wet themselves. The view screen flickered to life, and instead of the cowering planetary leader they expected, they found themselves face to face with a middle-aged human in what appeared to be a casual business suit. He was sitting behind a desk, sipping coffee from a mug that read, "World's Okayest Diplomat," and he looked about as concerned as someone checking their grocery list. "Good morning," the human said pleasantly. "I'm Ambassador Jake Morrison, Earth's Director of Extraterrestrial Affairs. Welcome to our solar system. Can I get you folks some coffee? You look like you've had a long trip." Vexstar blinked. This was not going according to script. Where was the screaming, the panicking, the immediate surrender? "I am Vexstar the Bone Crusher, Supreme Commander of the Galactic Predator Council," he roared, adding extra reverb to his voice for maximum intimidation effect. "You will surrender your planet immediately or we will rain destruction upon your pathetic world." Jake nodded thoughtfully, as if someone had just explained a mildly interesting weather pattern. "Okay, yeah, I can see how that might seem like a reasonable request from your perspective. But we're going to have to pass on that one. Is there anything else we can help you with today?" "Pass?" Grimlock whispered. "Did he just say they're going to pass on surrendering?" "You dare refuse the might of the Predator Council?" Vexstar bellowed, his voice cracking slightly with confusion. "Well, dare is a strong word," Jake replied, taking another sip of his coffee. "It's more like we're politely declining. Think of it as a RSVP to a party we're not really interested in attending." At this point, a woman in a lab coat poked her head into frame behind Jake. She had the excited expression of someone who just discovered a new species of butterfly. "Oh, wow, are these the aliens?" she asked. "Hi there, I'm Luna Park, Chief Science Officer. Your ship design is fascinating. Is that bioengineered hull plating, or is it some kind of composite material? And those spike things, are they decorative, or do they serve some kind of defensive purpose?" Vexstar stared at the screen. In 3,000 years of conquest, no one had ever asked him about his ship's decorative spikes. They're for intimidation," he said weakly. "Oh, that's clever," Luna beamed. "Psychological warfare through aesthetic design choices. Though I have to ask, don't they create unnecessary drag in atmospheric flight? And the maintenance must be a nightmare." "We don't typically fly in atmospheres," Grimlock found himself answering before he could stop himself. "Smart. Though you might want to consider retractable spikes if you ever need atmospheric capability. We've got some interesting data on biomimetic hull modifications that might interest you." Vexstar felt a headache coming on. This conversation had somehow shifted from surrender or die to would you like to discuss engineering specifications. This had never happened before. Ever. "Listen," Jake said, leaning forward with the patient expression of someone dealing with an overly enthusiastic salesperson. "I can see you folks have this whole intimidating predator thing going on, and that probably works great in most situations, but we're kind of busy down here. We've got climate change to fix, a space program to expand, and someone needs to figure out why the International Space Station's coffee machine keeps making that weird noise." "You cannot simply ignore the Galactic Predator Council," Vexter sputtered. "We're not ignoring you," Luna chimed in helpfully. "We're just not particularly impressed. Your threat display is very thorough, though. The red lighting is a nice touch." And that's when Vexstar realized that for the first time in his long and successful career of terrorizing the galaxy, he might have met his match. Not another predator species, not some advanced military force, but a race of beings who responded to cosmic-level threats with the same energy as someone declining a timeshare presentation. This was going to be more complicated than he'd thought. If Vexstar thought the conversation was going badly, he was about to discover that things could get so much worse. Because when a predator species built their entire identity around being the biggest, scariest thing in the room, and someone responds with, "That's nice, dear," well, that's when egos start making really poor decisions. "Clearly," Vexstar announced, puffing out his chest like an angry peacock, "you do not understand the gravity of your situation. Perhaps a demonstration is required." He turned to his crew with the dramatic flair of someone who'd watched too many war movies. "Prepare the combat arena transmission. We shall show these humans what happens to those who refuse the Council's generous offer of subjugation." Within minutes, a holographic arena materialized on the main view screen, complete with ominous mood lighting and what could only be described as menacing architecture. In the center stood Krakthor the Fleshrender, the Council's champion gladiator. Picture a cross between a rhinoceros, a buzzsaw, and someone's worst nightmare. And you're halfway there. Krakthor stood 9 feet tall, had natural armor plating that could deflect artillery, and claws that had personally ended the careers of 47 previous challengers. "Behold!" Vexstar declared with the confidence of someone who'd never lost at this particular game. "Our champion, Krakthor the Fleshrender. He has defeated the greatest warriors of 100 worlds. Surely your species has some fighter brave enough to face him? Or will you surrender now and spare yourselves the humiliation?" Jake looked at the screen with the expression of someone being offered a free sample at the grocery store. "Oh, you want to do like a gladiator thing? That's kind of retro. Luna, do we have anyone who might be interested in this?" "Actually," Luna said, consulting something on her tablet, "Captain Rodriguez is on rotation up at the station. He might enjoy this. He's been complaining about being bored lately." "Perfect. Rex, you there?" The view screen split to show a stocky man in his 40s floating in what appeared to be a space station gym. He was built like someone who'd been assembled from spare bulldozer parts, with graying hair, scars that suggested a life of poor decision-making, and the kind of smile that made insurance companies nervous. "Yeah, I'm here," Rex said, doing casual pull-ups in zero gravity. "What's up, Jake? Please tell me it's something more interesting than another budget meeting. We've got some alien visitors who want to do a fighting competition. You interested?" Rex's eyes lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. "Are you kidding? I've been stuck up here for 3 weeks calibrating sensor arrays. Yes, I am absolutely interested in fighting an alien. What's the catch?" "Well," Jake said, glancing at Vextar, "apparently if you lose, we all become their slaves or something. And if I win..." Honestly, we didn't get that far in the negotiations. Rex grinned. "Even better. I love a good mystery prize. When do we start?" Vextar couldn't believe what he was hearing. This human was treating a fight to the death like a recreational activity. "You do understand," he said slowly, "that Crackthor has never been defeated. He has literally torn apart every opponent he has faced." "Has he ever fought a human?" Rex asked, genuinely curious. "Well, no, but..." "Then he hasn't fought everyone, has he?" Rex pushed off from the wall and started floating toward what appeared to be a weapons locker. "Give me 20 minutes to gear up and get down there. This is going to be fun." Luna was taking notes frantically. "This is fascinating from an anthropological perspective. Most species respond to our gladiatorial challenges with either terror or formal military preparation. Your species appears to treat it as entertainment." "To be fair," Jake said, "Rex treats everything as entertainment. Last month he arm wrestled a malfunctioning cargo robot because he was bored." "Did he win?" Grimlock asked despite himself. "Oh yeah, the robot needed therapy afterward." 23 minutes later, Rex had somehow made his way down to Earth's surface and was standing in what appeared to be a hastily constructed arena in downtown Geneva. He was wearing what looked like a modified spacesuit covered in padding, duct tape, and what appeared to be motivational stickers. His weapon of choice was a crowbar that had been painted bright yellow with the words "Problem Solver" written on it in permanent marker. Across from him, Crackthor loomed like a mountain of rage and natural weaponry. The alien champion roared a challenge that could probably be heard from orbit, displaying teeth that could double as industrial cutting tools. Rex waved cheerfully. "Hey there, big guy! Nice teeth! Did you floss this morning? Because dental hygiene is really important, even for terrifying alien death machines." Crackthor paused mid-roar, clearly not expecting commentary on his oral care routine. "Begin," Vextar commanded, confident that this would finally show these humans the error of their ways. What happened next was not so much a fight as it was a masterclass in why humans had survived as a species, despite being relatively small, soft, and lacking natural weapons. Crackthor charged with the subtlety of a freight train, claws extended, ready to end this quickly. Rex waited until the last possible second, then dove to the side, using his crowbar to hook Crackthor's ankle. The massive alien went tumbling, momentum carrying him face-first into the arena wall with a crash that registered on seismic sensors. "Oh, that had to hurt," Rex said sympathetically. "You okay there, buddy?" Crackthor scrambled to his feet, shook his head to clear it, and charged again. This time, Rex was ready with what could only be described as the most underhanded fighting tactics the galaxy had ever witnessed. He threw sand in Crackthor's eyes, used the alien's own momentum against him, and at one point actually climbed onto Crackthor's back and started giving him unsolicited advice about his fighting stance. "See, your problem is you're relying too much on brute force," Rex explained while dodging a swipe that could have decapitated a small tree. "You've got reach and strength, but you're telegraphing every move. Try mixing it up a little." "This is not how gladiatorial combat works," Vextar protested. "It's working pretty well for me," Rex replied, somehow managing to tie Crackthor's legs together using the alien's own decorative chainmail. "Besides, you never said there were rules." The fight ended when Rex managed to convince Crackthor to punch himself in the face. Not through mind control or advanced technology, but through a combination of psychology, misdirection, and what could only be described as aggressive life coaching. "And that," Rex said to the stunned silence that followed, "is why you should never skip leg day. Good fight, though. You want to grab a beer? I know a great place." Meanwhile, Luna had been busy with her tablet during the fight. "Jake," she said quietly, "I've been analyzing their technology while everyone was distracted." "What kind of problem?" "The kind where their advanced starships are actually less efficient than our current prototypes. and their weapons technology is about 30 years behind our military development. Also, I've been monitoring their communications, and apparently they think we're a primitive species because we haven't achieved faster-than-light travel. Jake blinked. We have achieved faster-than-light travel. The Henderson Drive went online 6 months ago. I know, but we haven't told anyone because the Committee on First Contact wanted to do more testing first. These guys have been making assumptions based on outdated intelligence. On the main view screen, Vexstar was having what could only be described as an existential crisis. His champion had been defeated by a human, with a crowbar and an attitude problem. His intimidation tactics had been met with casual interest, and now he was starting to suspect that maybe, just maybe, he had severely miscalculated. There must be some mistake, he muttered. Oh, there's been a mistake all right, Rex called out, still offering to buy Crackthor a beer. But it wasn't ours. And that's when Jake decided it was time to drop the really big bombshell. Jake Morrison had spent 15 years as a Marine before becoming a diplomat, which meant he had a finely tuned sense of when it was time to stop being polite and start being educational. As he watched Vexstar have what appeared to be a minor nervous breakdown on the view screen, Jake decided it was time for what he liked to call the come to Jesus talk. Okay, Jake said, settling back in his chair with the relaxed posture of someone about to deliver very bad news. I think we've had enough fun for one day. Luna, why don't you pull up the files? Which files? Luna asked with barely contained glee. All of them. The split-screen display suddenly filled with data streams, star charts, and what appeared to be detailed intelligence reports. Vexstar's eyes widened as he recognized fleet movements, base locations, and communication intercepts that should have been impossible for a primitive species to obtain. Surprise, Jake said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. We've known about your little galactic predator council for about 43 years now, ever since we figured out how to decrypt your communication protocols. Pro tip, using the same encryption key for 3 centuries isn't great operational security. Grimlock made a choking sound. You've been spying on us. Spying is such an ugly word, Luna chimed in. We prefer taking an active interest in galactic affairs. And honestly, it wasn't even that hard. Your communications discipline is terrible. Did you know that Commander Zuragtok of the 7th Fleet regularly uses unsecured channels to order takeout? His favorite is something called screaming slug pasta. Vexstar's mandibles clicked rapidly, which in his species indicated extreme stress. This is impossible. You're a single-planet species. You barely have space travel. About that, Jake said, pulling up another set of files. Luna, show them the Henderson Drive test results. The screen filled with footage of sleek Earth ships making faster-than-light jumps with the casual efficiency of a well-oiled machine. Ships that were clearly more advanced than the Predator Council's own vessels. We've actually had FTL capability for 8 months now, Jake explained conversationally. We just didn't announce it because, well, first contact protocols. We wanted to observe before making ourselves known. And boy, have we observed some interesting things. Such as? Vexstar asked weakly. Such as the fact that your mighty Predator Empire is actually a protection racket that's been skating by on reputation for about 1,000 years. Your technology has stagnated, your military tactics haven't evolved since the Bronze Age, and most of the species you've conquered could probably take you in a fair fight if they ever bothered to try. On cue, a new voice cut into the transmission. Jake, dear, are you being mean to the nice aliens again? The view screen expanded to show a grandmotherly woman in her 70s, wearing a crisp naval uniform and sitting in what appeared to be the command center of a very large, very advanced spacecraft. She had silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and the sort of smile that could either offer you fresh-baked cookies or order your complete destruction with equal warmth. Admiral Chen, Jake said respectfully. I was just explaining some things to our guests. Admiral Betty Chen, 5th Fleet, she introduced herself to the stunned Predator Council. And before you ask, yes, 5th Fleet. We have 4 others just like it, well, not exactly like it. The 3rd Fleet specializes in deep space operations, the 2nd handles planetary defense, and the 1st, well, let's just say the 1st Fleet, handles situations that require a more direct approach. Vexstar was starting to make sounds that weren't quite words. The idea that this primitive species had not 1 but 5 fleets of advanced starships was causing his worldview to collapse in real time. Now, Admiral Chen continued in the tone of someone explaining something to a particularly slow child, I understand you've been making some threats about conquering our little planet. That's adorable. But here's the thing, sweethearts. We've spent the last 4 decades, quietly, liberating every species you've been bullying. Liberating? Grimlock whispered. Oh yes, Admiral Chen beamed. The Floofians? Lovely people. Turns out they make excellent engineers when they're not terrified out of their minds. They've been helping us design better shield generators. The tentacle people of Squishy Prime? Brilliant mathematicians. They've revolutionized our navigation systems. And the crystalline hive minds of Refract 7? Well, they've been teaching us some very interesting things about quantum computing. Luna pulled up another display, showing a massive space station that clearly hadn't been built by human hands alone. It was a beautiful fusion of architectural styles, with organic curves mixing with geometric precision and crystalline structures integrated seamlessly with metallic frameworks. Welcome to Haven Station, Jake announced proudly. Joint construction project. Humans provided the basic framework and life support, the Floofians handled environmental systems, the tentacle people worked out the math, and the crystallines created the computer networks. It's been operational for 6 months now. But they're prey species, Vexstar protested weakly. No, Jake corrected, his voice suddenly much colder. They're people. And the thing about humans? We have this weird habit of adopting strays. You know what we call all these species you've been terrorizing? What? Grimlock asked, though he clearly didn't want to know the answer. For family. Admiral Chen nodded approvingly. Jake's right. Once we adopt something, we tend to get very protective of it. Ask the dinosaurs. Oh, wait, you can't. They're extinct. But that's a different story. This brings us to the current situation, Jake continued, pulling up star charts that showed ship positions throughout the galaxy. See, we've been keeping track of all your council's strongholds, fleet positions, and supply lines. Not because we were planning to attack, mind you, we're not like that, but because we wanted to be prepared, in case someone decided to threaten our new extended family. The star charts showed an overwhelming number of human and allied vessels positioned strategically throughout Predator Council territory, not in attack formations, but clearly ready to respond to any aggressive moves. How many ships do you have? Vexstar asked in a voice that suggested he really didn't want to know. Well, Admiral Chen said thoughtfully, if you count the human fleets, plus all our adopted species who've been building their own ships with our help, plus the various automated defense platforms we've been deploying, Luna, what's our current number? Luna consulted her tablet. As of this morning, approximately 12,000 combat-capable vessels, with another 8,000 in support roles. The silence that followed was so complete you could have heard a pin drop in the vacuum of space. 12,000, Vexstar repeated numbly. Give or take, Admiral Chen said cheerfully. The Floofians have been very productive lately. They're excited about contributing to the family defense force. But you're peaceful, Grimlock protested. You offered us coffee. You wanted to discuss engineering specifications. Oh, we are peaceful, Jake confirmed. We'd much rather talk things out over coffee and maybe some of Admiral Chen's excellent cookies. But peaceful doesn't mean helpless. It just means we prefer to solve problems without violence when possible. And when it's not possible? Vexstar asked, though he clearly dreaded the answer. Admiral Chen's smile never wavered, but something in her eyes shifted. For just a moment, the kindly grandmother facade slipped, and underneath was something that had commanded fleets through actual combat operations. Well, she said sweetly, then we solve them anyway. Rex's voice crackled through the comm system from the arena below. Hey, did someone mention cookies? Because I worked up an appetite beating up your champion here. Also, Crackthor wants to know if he can get asylum. Apparently fighting humans is way more fun than whatever he was doing before. And that's when Vexstar realized the horrible truth. Humanity wasn't just another prey species or even another predator species. They were something far more dangerous. A species that had figured out how to turn predators into family members. The galaxy was never going to be the same. If Vexstar thought the situation couldn't get any worse, he was about to learn that humans had a particular talent for exceeding expectations in the most uncomfortable ways possible. Because Luna Park had spent the last hour compiling what she cheerfully called the full anthropological assessment, and she was practically vibrating with excitement to share her findings. Jake, Luna said, her voice carrying the barely contained enthusiasm of someone who just solved a particularly fascinating puzzle. I think our guests would benefit from a comprehensive briefing on human behavioral patterns, so they can make informed decisions about their next steps. Go ahead, Luna, Jake said, settling back with the expression of someone about to watch a really good-natured documentary. I think they're ready for the full picture. Luna's presentation began with what appeared to be a perfectly innocent star chart showing human expansion patterns over the past 50 years. Except the more Vexstar looked at it, the less innocent it became. So here's the thing about humans, Luna began, with the tone of a professor delivering a lecture to particularly slow students. Most species, when they encounter a hostile environment, either adapt to it or avoid it. Humans look at hostile environments and think, I wonder if I can make friends with this. The star chart zoomed in to show human settlements in locations that should have been completely uninhabitable. Ice worlds, where the average temperature was 200 degrees below freezing. Desert planets, where the surface was hot enough to melt lead. Gas giants, where humans had somehow built floating cities in the upper atmosphere. This is Frost 7, Luna said, highlighting a blue dot that looked like a cosmic ice cube. Average temperature, minus 230 degrees Fahrenheit. Atmosphere, basically non-existent. Radiation levels, lethal to most known species. Human population, 47,000 and growing. That's impossible, Grimlock protested. No one can survive on Frost 7. We designated it as a dead world. Oh, it's definitely dead, Luna agreed cheerfully. That's what makes it perfect for ice mining operations. Plus, the low gravity makes it great for zero-G sports. The human settlers there have developed some fascinating adaptations. They've basically turned survival into a competitive hobby. The display switched to show what appeared to be humans in modified spacesuits, racing across frozen landscapes on vehicles that looked like they'd been designed by someone with a death wish and an engineering degree. And this, Luna continued, is Infernus Prime. Surface temperature 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Atmosphere, sulfuric acid with a side of toxic gas. Seismic activity, constant. Current human population, 82,000. Admiral Chen's voice cut in from her ship. The geothermal energy generation on Infernus is remarkable. Plus, the mineral extraction operations are very profitable. The settlers there have developed some wonderful heat-resistant crops. They're farming on a planet made of lava? Vexstar asked weakly. Underground hydroponics, Jake explained. Turns out volcanic soil is incredibly fertile once you figure out how to not die from the heat. Who knew? But Luna was just getting started. The presentation shifted to show something that made even less sense. Humans living in the void of space itself. Ah yes, the Voidwalkers, Luna said with obvious admiration. These are humans who've chosen to live permanently in deep space aboard generation ships. No planetary base, no fixed location, just wandering the galaxy in self-sustaining communities. Current population, approximately 3 million across 47 ship cities. But why? Grimlock asked, his voice carrying the desperation of someone whose entire understanding of biology was being systematically demolished. Because it's there, Rex's voice crackled through the comm system. Also because some humans get claustrophobic on planets. Too much gravity, too much atmosphere. Some folks prefer the freedom of the void. This is all very impressive, Vexstar said, trying to regain some control of the situation. But extreme survival doesn't make you predators. It just makes you very stubborn prey. The silence that followed was so profound it seemed to echo. Jake and Luna exchanged glances. Admiral Chen made a small sound that might have been a chuckle. Even Rex had gone quiet. Oh dear, Admiral Chen said finally. They don't understand, do they? Understand what? Vexstar demanded. Luna pulled up a new display and suddenly the conversation took a very different turn. What appeared on screen wasn't star charts or settlement data. It was Earth's history, compressed into a timeline that looked like a catalog of disasters. Let me explain something about human evolution, Luna said, her voice taking on the tone of someone delivering a eulogy. Most species evolve on worlds with stable climates, predictable seasons, and environments that remain largely unchanged for millions of years. Humans evolved on a planet that was actively trying to kill them. The timeline showed ice ages that lasted hundreds of thousands of years, asteroid impacts that blacked out the sky, volcanic eruptions that changed the climate overnight, and plagues that wiped out entire populations. Every few thousand years, something happened that should have ended humanity, Luna continued. Ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, global pandemics, climate shifts that turned fertile land into desert overnight. Do you know how most species respond to extinction-level events? Amy, adapt? Grimlock suggested hopefully. They die, Jake corrected. They die quietly, they die quickly, and they leave behind fossils that other species find millions of years later. Humans looked at extinction-level events and said, not today. The display shifted to show human history in more detail. Civilizations rising from the ashes of disasters that should have ended them. technology developing in response to challenges that would have destroyed other species, art, music, and literature created in the midst of circumstances that should have made creativity impossible. We survived the last ice age by learning to make fire in conditions that would freeze plasma, Luna explained. We survived plagues by developing medicine. We survived wars by learning cooperation. We survived famines by developing agriculture. We survived floods by building boats. Every single disaster that hit us, we turned into a learning experience. And then, Admiral Chen added with a grandmother's pride, we started looking around for others who needed help surviving disasters. The presentation shifted again, and suddenly Vextar was looking at something that made his blood run cold. It was a comprehensive analysis of human military history, but not the way most species understood warfare. Most predator species, Luna continued, developed military technology to dominate other species. Humans developed military technology to survive other humans. Do you understand the difference? Vextar was beginning to, and he didn't like it. When you're fighting other species, you just need to be superior, Jake explained. When you're fighting your own species, you need to be adaptive, innovative, and absolutely ruthless. Because the other guy is just as smart as you are, just as motivated, and just as desperate. The display showed human military innovations throughout history. Not just weapons, but logistics, strategy, psychology, communication systems, and tactics that had been developed through thousands of years of warfare against opponents who were just as intelligent and creative as the humans fighting them. By the time we developed spaceflight, Luna said, we had already survived every form of warfare, every type of disaster, and every kind of challenge that a hostile universe could throw at us. And then we met other species who were still dealing with their first serious predator threat. The thing is, Rex called out from below, we're really good at violence. We're just better at not using it. Took us a few thousand years to figure that out, but we got there eventually. Admiral Chen nodded approvingly. Violence is a tool, dear, a very effective tool when used properly, but the trick is knowing when not to use it. So, when you see a species like the Floofians being bullied, Jake continued, our first instinct isn't to conquer them, it's to adopt them. Because we learned a long time ago that cooperation is how you survive impossible odds. And when someone threatens our family, Admiral Chen added, her voice still sweet but carrying an undertone that made the temperature in the room seem to drop, well, that's when we remember that we're very, very good at violence. Luna pulled up one final display. It showed current human population distribution across the galaxy, not just on habitable worlds, but everywhere, in space stations, on asteroids, in the atmospheres of gas giants, in the radiation fields around neutron stars, in the frozen outer systems where even light was a stranger. Current human population across the galaxy, approximately 2 billion, Luna announced. Current population of adopted species living under human protection, 47 billion. Current number of species that have joined the human extended family in the last 5 years, 237. Vextar stared at the numbers, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. You're not just a predator species, he whispered. Oh no, Jake said with a smile that was suddenly much less friendly. We're something much worse than that. We're a predator species that figured out cooperation. And, Admiral Chen added cheerfully, we're very good at sharing what we've learned. 6 months later, Vextar the Bone Crusher was having an identity crisis of the most delicious kind. Literally. Order up, he called out in surprisingly cheerful broken English, sliding a steaming container across the counter of his food truck. Vex's venomous victuals is good for you, very spicy but no poison, promise. The customer, a Floofian engineer who was taking a lunch break from installing new gravity generators on Luna Station, accepted the container with the sort of trust that would have been unthinkable just months ago. A member of a prey species casually eating food prepared by a former apex predator, while said predator wore an apron that read, "Kiss the cook, but watch the teeth." The food truck itself was a marvel of cross-cultural cooperation. Vextar had designed the cooking systems based on Predator Council thermal technology, but the Floofians had helped optimize the heating elements, and human engineers had added safety features that prevented the whole thing from exploding when Vextar got excited about his recipes. Which happened a lot. You know, said the Floofian, sampling what appeared to be some kind of fusion cuisine that combined traditional Predator Council meat-burning techniques with human seasoning and Floofian vegetable cultivation. This is actually incredible. What do you call this dish? It's called Redemption Stew, Vextar replied proudly, his English improving daily thanks to the language classes Admiral Chen had set up. Recipe comes from old predator tradition, but I add vegetables, like Luna teach me. Makes it, what is word, balanced. It's perfect, the Floofian said, and meant it. This was the new galaxy, and it was weird in the best possible way. A few hundred yards away, in what used to be a lunar mining facility and was now a community center, Grimlock was discovering that he had a talent he never knew existed. He was teaching. Okay, remember, he said to a mixed class of former prey species, his natural predator instincts adapted to a completely different purpose. When someone grabs you like this, you don't panic. You use their momentum against them. Like this. He demonstrated a defensive move on a volunteer, a young tentacle person who had signed up for the self-defense classes after hearing they were taught by a real former predator. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The key, Grimlock continued, helping his volunteer back to their feet, is not to fight their strength. You redirect it. Make them defeat themselves. Is that how humans beat you? Asked a crystalline student, their faceted surface reflecting curiosity in multiple spectrums. Grimlock paused, considering the question seriously. No, he said finally. Humans didn't defeat us. They confused us so badly we defeated ourselves. Very different technique, much more advanced. The class laughed, which was something Grimlock was still getting used to. Being laughed with, rather than being feared, was an adjustment. A good adjustment, but an adjustment nonetheless. Will you teach us that technique too? Asked a small Floofian in the back. I don't think I can, Grimlock admitted. That requires being human. But I can teach you how to be so aggressively helpful that your enemies have nervous breakdowns trying to figure out what you're up to. More laughter. Grimlock was discovering that he enjoyed making people laugh almost as much as he had once intimidating them. Almost. Meanwhile, in the administrative center of what had once been the Predator Council's primary stronghold and was now the headquarters of the Galactic Cooperation Initiative, Ambassador Jake Morrison was dealing with the kind of problems that came with success. So, let me get this straight, he said, rubbing his temples as he reviewed the morning reports. The Crystalline Collective wants to join the family, but they're worried about the housing situation because they eat radiation, and most of our habitats are specifically designed to keep radiation out. That's correct, confirmed his assistant, a remarkably efficient AI named Marcus, multi-species administrative relations and cultural understanding system, that had been developed jointly by human programmers and crystalline network specialists. And the void whales want to establish formal diplomatic relations, but they communicate through gravitational waves, and we're still figuring out how to build translators that don't require a particle accelerator. Also correct. And the gas giant collective is interested in joining, but they exist as sentient atmospheric phenomena, and we're not entirely sure how to fit them into our current legal framework for citizenship. You're getting very good at this, Marcus observed, with what Jake had learned to recognize as AI approval. Jake sighed. I used to negotiate arms control treaties. This is somehow more complicated. But more rewarding, Marcus suggested. Jake looked out the window at what had once been a symbol of galactic oppression and was now a bustling multicultural hub, where former predators ran restaurants next to former prey species, teaching advanced mathematics to human children, where crystalline entities shared processing power with human computers to solve engineering problems that neither could handle alone, where void whales sang gravitational lullabies to help young Floofians sleep. Yeah, Jake admitted. Definitely more rewarding. His contemplation was interrupted by Admiral Chen's voice over the intercom. Jake dear, we've got another situation developing. Please tell me it's not another Predator Council, Jake pleaded. I'm not sure the galaxy can handle 2 conversion projects at once. Oh no, nothing like that, Admiral Chen's voice carried obvious amusement. This is much more interesting. We've detected signals from outside the galaxy. Apparently, someone in Andromeda has noticed all the activity over here and wants to establish contact. Jake brightened. Friendly contact or threatening contact? Well, they started by sending us mathematical equations and star charts. But then they sent us what appears to be a recipe for something called friendship bread and an invitation to a potluck dinner. I like them already. I thought you might. Luna's already working on a response. She wants to send them our own recipe collection and ask if they need any help with local predator problems. Jake laughed, a sound that had become much more common in recent months. Of course she does. What did Rex say when he heard about potential new people to meet? He managed to ask if they had any interesting sports, and whether anyone needed anything blown up in a controlled and helpful manner. And Beckstar? started planning a menu for an intergalactic welcome feast. He's very excited about the possibility of new ingredients to work with. This was the new normal, Jake realized. Humans had spent their entire evolutionary history turning disasters into opportunities, enemies into family, and impossible challenges into growth experiences. Now they were doing it on a galactic scale. His reflection was interrupted by Marcus. "Jake, incoming priority transmission from the Deep Space Monitoring Station. Put it through." The screen filled with the image of Captain Rodriguez, who appeared to be floating in zero gravity while simultaneously eating what looked like one of Vextar's more experimental dishes, and reviewing star charts. "Jake, you're going to love this," Rex announced around a mouthful of redemption stew. "We just got word from the Andromeda contact team. Turns out they're not just one species. They're a whole cooperative of different species that have been working together for about 10,000 years. Seriously? It gets better. They heard about what happened with our Predator Council friends and they want advice on dealing with their own local bully problem. Apparently they've got something called the Entropy Empire that's been causing trouble, and they think our aggressive adoption approach might work better than their current strategy of politely asking them to stop." Jake felt that familiar sensation he'd learned to recognize as the universe presenting him with another interesting challenge. "What's their current strategy been?" he asked. "Mostly hiding and hoping the problem goes away." "And how's that working out for them?" "About as well as you'd expect." Jake looked around his office, at the reports from dozens of species that had gone from living in fear to building thriving communities together, at the engineering projects that combined the best ideas from hundreds of different civilizations, at the cultural exchange programs that had former predators teaching art classes and former prey species designing starships. "Marcus, get me Admiral Chen, Luna, and anyone else who wants to help plan an intergalactic intervention," he said finally. "Another family adoption project?" Marcus asked. "The biggest one yet," Jake confirmed. "Looks like we're going to need a bigger table." Outside, Vextar was already planning the menu for the welcome feast. Grimlock was wondering if his teaching methods would work on intergalactic bullies, and Rex was calculating how much fun it would be to show an entire other galaxy that cooperation was way more entertaining than conquest. The universe was about to get a lot more interesting. And somewhere in the back of his mind, Jake had the distinct feeling that this was exactly what humanity had been preparing for all along. Every disaster survived, every enemy befriended, every impossible challenge overcome, had been training for this moment. Time to introduce another galaxy to the concept of family. After all, there was always room for more at the table.